Yeah, some of us won't catch it. So I'll call the meeting to order. On that illuminating note, you all have received our expertly prepared minutes from our May 2025 meeting and have reviewed them, as have I. And I will entertain a motion to approve the minutes. Dr. Christie, thank you very much. Is there a second?
Second.
There's second. Moved and second. Any discussion? There being none. All those in favor of approval of the minutes, please say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Any abstentions? There are none. I want to acknowledge those of you who are participating by Zoom, and we're very pleased that you have joined us. We continue to work to upgrade our technology, and I think we're getting there through the hard work of the staff and Suki and Bethany and Ainsley. So please speak up if there's any technology glitch that you need to bring to our attention. Thank you very much. We'll go into our updates that Suki is prepared to present. Obviously, there has been a change at the top of the Department of Juvenile Services, and we all are committed to this work. And the change at the top will not have any adverse impact whatsoever on our mandate, our mission, our goal, and the important work that all of you are doing in the various work groups and leadership and otherwise. So we'll hear from Interim Secretary Fox Tolentino before the meeting ends, I'm sure. We wish our dear friend Vinny Giraldi the best, and we will continue to be engaged with him as appropriate. With that, let me turn the microphone over to Suki for a review of some important information. Suki.
Thank you, Judge. You have all received some information in the last few days. It's also posted online on our website. These include the statutory requirements overview for the commission. I essentially pulled the statute and their exact requirements that the commission is beholden to for the state and put it into an entity draft just to kind of get a visual to make sure that in some way or another the commission and the work groups are hitting all of the marks. You can look at it and see that yes, we are doing that, but I kind of just want to walk you through that. For folks who were here, it's very, very tiny, but I will kind of read it out. Folks have also a hard copy at the table, also very, very tiny. You have it in your inboxes, but I will strain my eyes and try to review it for you. So in essence, the commission, we are due to review and report on juvenile services, facilities, educational programs to divert children from the juvenile justice system, the treatment and programming needs of females in the juvenile justice system, and the use of child in need supervision petitions and a number of child in need supervision petitions authorized or denied by jurisdiction and wait time for placement of children in facilities. This is a commission-wide effort. I feel like all of us are touching on this to a degree or another, or we know that they plan to. This is an important aspect of what we are doing. I think that we know that in this first year, we have a lot on this list. We're hitting most of it. And I think that we're looking good moving on. This next piece, you can see I crossed youth rehabilitation services because they are looking at in this research, culturally competent evidence-based research-based and promising programs and practices. Juvenile rehabilitation is being hit there. It also has prevention, and of course we have a prevention work group. There's mental health services for children, and obviously that's being hit in other ways too. And the next one, identify needs and evaluate the effectiveness of programs and practices researched by the commission, giving special attention to organizations located in or serving historically underserved communities, identifying strategies to enable community-based organizations to provide services to juveniles. I put youth rehab there again, but your workers are like, we do that too, and it's true. It's true. I know prevention and processes are thinking about that as well. Participating in interpreting the for the public, the objectives. We have a whole work group, our public education there. Identifying opportunities for greater coordination between DJS, offices, state's attorneys, law enforcement, local organizations. Our processes group is deep into that, amongst others. Recommend policies and programs to improve juvenile services in the state. Prevention processes are all over that, as well as others. Examine and review fatalities. We have a fatality review work group for that. They will begin review in October. Evaluate the cost effectiveness of existing and promising programs. Processes is doing that, as well as prevention and education. That's a very touched upon area. Participate in planning the development and use of available resources to meet the needs of juveniles. I think that's everyone. Review data related to address completion of programming and recidivism from the Maryland Longitudinal Data System Center. We have a data request out to them at this moment, and it's in lots of progress, right? And once we get that back, we will put together the dashboards and all that information for this commission to use, and it will be available on our website. I think all of those things are good. I'm sorry, I'm speeding through this. Thank you for stopping.
We have a data request to the judiciary, right?
Turn on the mic, please, Susan.
We do have a request to the judiciary. We have, I think, 3 or 4 requests out to different bodies right now.
Do we have any timelines as to when will we have the information before our report to the legislature in October?
That's a good question. It depends on the complexity of the data and how much manpower the agency that we're requesting has to give us that data quickly. So it could take, we just had a data request that we sent to DJS. DJS is sharing their data with us that they're going to give us the data in a couple weeks. But for other data requests, it could take a couple of months. Once we send out the data request, it's kind of out of our hands as an office, and it's up to the other agencies to provide it in a quick manner.
Well, could we have a chart that said data request and then timeline? Because the last commission was never able to get certain information, and the legislature always says, well, we want this information to make our decision, and we, we're like at the same spot. So I think we need to document when we ask for the information, when we receive the information, so that when the legislature says, well, we can't do anything until we get this information, we can say, it's been asked for 2 years ago. You can ensure that information gets to us. Otherwise, we're just twirling around.
Understood. We do have that spreadsheet of those requests that have been made. Susan, yes, agreed. Susan wants the receipts. And yes, Ainsley is delivering on that. So we have a sheet of those requests that are currently active. That's fine. Thank you, Susan, for raising that. The last
That's going to be part of our report, right?
Yes, I think that now that you mention it, it should be that we do have this request out. Yeah. Let's see. Now that I think about it, that we do mention in the report, the requests that go out to the different offices. So, all right. So, the last piece here is the coordinating with the Department of Labor to identify potential job and apprenticeship opportunities. So, we have not done that, and I believe it makes the most sense for you to have to be thinking about that. And we'll discuss that and where that best belongs. But that could be next on our steering committee agenda. But I think
Okay, I'll put it in.
prevention.
Because a lot of the kids have an appointment.
That makes sense. I'll read you that one.
Oh, I was saying that will fit with our ecological model kind of approach that we're taking.
Yeah. Okay. So that's that. I just wanted to give y'all a very brief run through about kind of where we stand right now. If this was largely done for my benefit when I first came on, so I was just like, I just wanted to get a sense of where we stood. Yeah, moving on, you all received a report outline at the beginning of the month with the request to review it by the 16th. I wanted to just walk you through it today. Just to be sure, if there were any questions or anything that y'all had. So you have it in hard copy. Inslee has it up there. Y'all can bring your eyes to look at that if you like. Over on the side. So we will start with an introduction with the commission's background, purpose, and scope, and then go into the statute that created it and its key responsibilities, which I just reviewed. We will talk about year one and the launch of the commission, the development of the work groups and the charters for the different work groups, their purpose, and the ways that they have engaged members and stakeholders, and the commissioners has done that. And then each work group will have its separate summary. You can see the public education and narrative change work group will have their summary, and they will all pretty much be similar in nature, and the outline will speak to who's involved in those, their objectives and their approach, a run through of their meetings, what happened, who was there, who was presenting what was learned, who they've been collaborating with, and emerging themes and preliminary findings, and their outputs if they put out any reports or documents, and then their next steps and reflections. So you can kind of scan and see that prevention, rehabilitative services, fatality review, processes and system coordination all follow the same format. And then at the end of the report, we will go into the cross-cutting themes from the different work groups and have an overview of the systemic barriers they're identifying, and then get into the next steps in the future work of this commission and the recommendations for continued engagement, stakeholder involvement, and so on. And then there will be appendices with all of the information that you have received, as well as about. That's the general outline. Are there any missing pieces, anything that you're like, oh, there's this? Silence means goodness. So I have a suggestion.
Thank you. Cynthia, I have a suggestion, and that is with my colleagues in mind. And I like the introduction and the overview. In one of those two places, if we could have an executive summary, because it kind of makes you continue turning pages. Sure. And I think it would be helpful. And also, depending on how long it is, a table of contents is very helpful. Okay, good. I just know how people are so busy and they, go right. They want to go right to whatever information.
I think I for that. Yes, that's great. And there will be a preface from Judge Davis as well. Okay. Any other comments? All right, you still have 3 days. If you go home and you wake up in the middle of the night, feel free to share.
I'm just, and I was thinking about this when I saw the email at first, you can remind about the hard copy that it might be helpful to sort of be pithy about like moving from talk to action. I'm not interested in actually having a report where the legislature that's talking about all the systemic failures. There are people that have actually very specific ideas about this, so there should be a very concrete action step and by when is responsible for it. And so I think that every section of the report has something simple. It doesn't have to have 17 things or 17,000 things, which are the tradition of many of these commissions, but maybe one or two things that will get done in that quarter.
Thank you. Any other? I'm writing all the notes. All right, thank you, Secretary. Okay, moving on, Judge Davis, you want to, oh wait, I just wanted to briefly take you all through the timeline. So the summary review by the 16th, again, you have a few days for that. The outline review by the 16th. The summaries are very well, it's pretty much done, and your work groups are going to review them. And then by the next work group meeting, you will review your changes and approve them, and they will be added to the full report. So essentially, this month's work group, you will go over it, and then you'll have the next month to review the edits. And we will move from there, and then we will circulate the finalized summaries at the end of July, at the last work group meeting is July 28th. So I will assume that we will get the check to move forward, and I will circulate the complete report draft on August 4th. You'll have most of the month to review that report, and then we will move from there. I think we should be set for our October 1st deadline. I think we're doing great work. I hope that you'll be happy with the report. I'm seeing it, and I'm moved, and I think it looks great. I've only been here 45 days. And I have the opportunity to kind of take stock of all the work that y'all have done in the last, it's only been 6 months or so, and I'm just kind of flabbergasted. I'm really impressed with what all you have done. So I hope that you will recognize, see that the work that you've done. The report can only cover so much. We only got started really in January with work group, so remember that too. Okay, that's the quick timeline. I think we're chugging along. Judge Davis.
Thank you very much, Luki. And just to reemphasize, you'll notice in the timeline, you will get what we think will be a pretty complete draft by August 4th. So if you are an August beach goer or whatever you do in August, be sure to take along your bedside reading. And we really, speaking for myself and speaking on behalf of all of us, very much want your input into these reports. And not just, I would say, not just input with regard to the particular work group on which you serve, but I'm really encouraging and asking everyone to review the entire report, front to back, and all the footnotes, and really dive in to give it your best eagle eye on substance and process and everything else. We really want it to be really our first report to be just an excellent work product. And I know it will be, but it will only be that if we all devote the time and attention to the work. And I know that Suki is doing a fantastic job with the staff and will carry us along. So with that, let's move into what I put in the agenda as an open discussion, which is a great segue actually from Suki's report. It occurred to me that we're not going to be together again until September, and that will be a Zoom meeting. Yes. Well, we're not sure yet. we actually want to make it an in-person meeting, actually. We want a couple of more panels. But in any event, since we won't be together for the rest of June, July and August, I just thought I wanted to throw it open for a few minutes and just give everybody an opportunity to reflect on the work we've done so far, the distance we've traveled so far, and see if anything is on your mind that you've been meaning to say or that just occurred to you last weekend, or that you're just curious about sitting here. Just want to open it up for observations and concerns. Susan has already gotten us off to a start because I know that Susan and frankly the secretary and others I've spoken to have always been concerned and voiced concern about our ability to get data. And so we need to ramp up our game, as it were, with agencies and particularly with the judiciary, to give us the data that we're asking for as promptly as possible. And so that's something that I, as chair, will continue to focus on, together with any and all of you, particularly the task group leaders, to make sure that the respondents really do become respondents and actually give us information. They're not a respondent unless and until they actually give us the information. So Susan, I hear you, I feel you, and I'm with you on that. Of course you do. Go ahead, Susan.
So we're in our committee, you know, the systems of the process. We're trying to figure out the system, which is challenging. And one of the things that we're having a hard time figuring out is that when I talk to legislators, they say their constituents are very concerned. They see kids doing bad things in the neighborhood, and the next day they're right back doing it. And so we're trying to figure out, are the police just saying it doesn't make sense, we're not even going to arrest them? Or is it, how do you find out really what, you know, I was asking Nate, because he has all this data, like, maybe you can explain it better, or like, we can't figure out what's really happening. Are they getting?
Well, I think we're going to get some answers to those questions actually with today's panel.
But that's the public defender, they don't get involved in, I'm saying at arrest. That what communities object to is they say they see the same kids doing the same thing, and the police say there's nothing we can do about it. Does that mean they don't arrest them, or does that mean they arrest them and the judge lets them? I want to know what it means when somebody says there's nothing we can do, nothing they are doing. I mean, it's coming from both sides, apparently. Yeah, please tell you.
So, this is a question that I hear as well. And my personal research has shown that we have some overarching principles that we have to always remember with respect to how law enforcement and justice works. There are adults, just keep in mind, there are adults who commit crimes who go home, because that's part of the system. If a judge or whoever is making that determination believes that this person should be allowed to go home, they get to go home. We have our perception, I don't know what it's called, but our perception work group that I'm sure is delving more into this. But there's something very important that I want to make sure that group talks about, and I'm saying it now, I'm not saying it to them, but that is the confidentiality of arrest for juveniles. That law is being broken repeatedly. Repeatedly. We're not arresting law enforcement. We're not arresting journalists for sharing that information. And that is a breaking of the law. They get to go home and do whatever needs to happen. So my point is that there's two overarching principles: confidentiality of juveniles' arrest records. It's supposed to happen. That's not happening. And two, individuals who commit an offense are not automatically detained because an offense occurred. That is just not the way the law works. Unfortunately, you can be an adult and commit an assault, and you may, in some circumstances, still go home. So what we're talking about, and I'm not talking to you, Susan, I may be looking at you, but I'm not, and I may sound preachy, but my preach is more of passion than it is anything against you. But my point is that we've forgotten about confidentiality. We've forgotten about what the whole purpose of our justice system is, and that is, even though those words are not in the Constitution, they are heavily applied, innocent until proven guilty. So while we get a spotlight shine on certain individuals, if those individuals, look, I guess I've made my point, but my point is that there are adults who commit crimes on a repeated basis and they go home. So we have children who commit an offense on a repeated basis and they go home. Who's making that determination? That's part of the system, and we're learning that through the process, and we have laws. But the point is that just because someone goes home or back into the community, I'm stop looking at Susan because I'm addressing you, so I'm gonna look over here. So, because I don't want to look like I'm preaching to you. But just because someone goes home, that doesn't mean that they're not facing consequences. So I just kind of feel like the reporting that we're hearing stops at a certain point. And one thing I wanted to say really quickly was I did attend a national NCSL, the National Council of State Legislators. I am a youth justice fellow there, and we just attended this, our first convening in Denver. And I have to say, one thing I hope our report contains is a comparison of where Maryland stands versus other states, because that data is important too. Not you all, but people would be surprised at some of the systems in some of the states that are perhaps less progressive than Maryland and how they treat their youth when it comes to offenses. So I wanted to mention that. I didn't mention when we were talking before, but I'd be remiss if I didn't mention we should also include a state comparison. And I do have some data that I can share with whatever work group would be the ones to actually do that.
I think it's very important that this commission do a robust comparison of where we stand on any number of metrics to states our same size, the larger states, different states, that because the world, I mean, none of this happens in a vacuum. None of this occurs other than in relation to how other systems work or don't work, as the case may be. Susan, do you want to respond briefly? Oh, Chief, go ahead. I'm sorry.
That wasn't directed to you either.
Takes a lot to offend me. I've been married 35 years. So it's funny because I spent another evening last night getting kicked around by a community because kids are breaking in their cars and the kids are right back out the next day. And yeah, and I'm resilient. It's okay. And I understand we got to take out their frustration somewhere. I was just sending a message to somebody before Belly Barton speaking, saying we have to be careful in our messaging because, meaning in law enforcement, because we certainly don't want every underage person has committed an offense to be held. Not by any stretch of the imagination. Last night in the meeting, well, I did anger some people with this because I mentioned, my deputy chief's very good at reminding me, remember when back when you were the real police? And we go to a shoplifter and a juvenile has shoplifted a bottle of soda candy. And we pay for it out of our pockets. And this is part of the data problem. I pay for it and then move on. I'm not going to call your dad and tell him, you just move on, go. Yeah. Well, we're not capturing it. So, and then it didn't dawn on me until recently, that's a problem. Because we're not truly capturing, but at least write a report on that of some sort. I get why the officers don't do that either. But anyway, the most egregious is what law enforcement is talking about, which is really, last night was just part of the process, but really where we really get beat up on, and not just juveniles. I've never seen in recent times, I've never seen anybody with an assault, hello, adult or juvenile. I hope everybody's sitting down. We had a woman gun down her stepfather in front of their house, shot him dead. I happen to have a surveillance team out there because we had juveniles doing carjackings. They go, didn't they hear the gunshots? They jump out of the car. The woman's running down the street with the gun in her hand. She throws it. We take her into custody. We get the gun. She got 444 days in jail. Convicted of that, she got 444 days in jail. So who's getting beat up in the community now? Me. Because she only got 404, and I'm like, I'm not a judge. I got Esquire behind my name, but I'm not a judge, and I certainly wasn't a lawyer out there. But some good lawyering, and I do appreciate that. So we can't lay this all at the altar of juvenile justice, and we got to understand, not the community, maybe we got to make them understand, not everybody needs to be held over. Now look, there are some that need to be held over. And some for their safety, and some for the safety of the community as well. And I know Doug Department's tired of hearing me say this. Part of our inability to interview juveniles has caused us to lose the ability to get them wraparound services. The second most common way, since I've been a cop, that juveniles getting services they need when being abused at home, abused on the field, abused somewhere, has been through the law enforcement interview. And so the interviewing process is not all nefarious like people think. Like we're just trying to get. I was chief of detectives in Montgomery County for a long time, 8 years chief of detectives there, and the juvenile bureau was under me. And our goal and focus was much like we heard from the people here on 15, May 15, was to get them wraparound services. That does frustrate the community because boy, the kids back home, you don't know what's going on in that home. You don't know what's happened to that kid in other places. We're trying to help that kid, and we're trying to be part of that process. So I don't think we're ever going to completely get past the community's frustration on this. And I don't want to act like we're martyrs. You get it directed. You certainly get it directed at you. And I'm sure a lot of people in this room get it directed. Welcome back. But so the messaging is, we've got to be careful with the messaging on that as well.
Chief, I really appreciate what you've shared. And again, I know that we're going to touch on a number of the issues you have alluded to in our panel tonight. Because what you're really talking about, among other things, and what I'm going to try to really throw some light on in our panel after we take a break, is the inherent tension, and you really captured it, as did Delegate Barrett, the inherent tension in the system between wanting to protect children and their due process rights that they enjoy, just like all of us are entitled to due process, and the presumption of innocence on the one hand, coupled with the fervent desire to provide services and treatment to children. And what our public defender panel is going to talk about today, I expect, is that tension, because they are the tip of the spear in this, at least with those kids who advance through the system to the point where they get a lawyer. So the lawyer wants what's best for the kid, for the child, the young person. And the community wants to be protected from that kid. And the lawyer's not opposed to community protection, but the lawyer has a duty to protect the rights of the kid. And so I think, you know, we're getting down to cases, as they say. This is where the rubber meets the road. And people have got to be educated in a way, not to disparage anybody, but there's a certain 8th grade or even 4th grade civics lesson that has to be taught here. That people need to understand, as Delegate Barrett said, people get released. People, including kids, get released. So it's not surprising that a kid you see engage in some antisocial behavior on Tuesday may well be back on that same corner on Thursday. We don't want that. We don't want that to happen. But that's the facts of life. So the question is, at least a significant part, is how do we keep that kid from going back on that corner or re-engaging in that behavior? Locking them up is not the answer. We know that. That's not the answer.
I wanted to jump
Go ahead.
in.
If I could just touch on.
Yeah, go ahead, Chief.
So I knew you weren't talking to me. With us speaking to the press in the elephant room, yes, I was on the news recently about it. And for the record, my intent wasn't what occurred later. That was, you know, believe me, I'm under no illusion. The Governor Moore was sitting there going, "Oh, Russ Campbell said it." Okay. But took great pains not to make connections there so people figure out who's who. We have, and I'm talking the collective, we got to be more careful with that because I actually, some reporters are giving me heck afterwards because I was too vague, but I was vague on purpose. I was obeying the laws. Now I'm a little different because I have a law license on the line, so I'm a little different with it. But we and I did want to touch, and not like the public defenders or any lawyers need me to defend them, but they got to defend the client.
Right.
And community protection is other people's focus. Protection of the client, protection of the client's rights. Because if not, I know I'm preaching to the choir. That's called malpractice, and you've got to be very careful with that. So everybody has their role within this, and people have to remember there's lanes that people have to stay.
And part of our charge, I really appreciate you owning it. You owning it, Chief. Part of our charge is community education and the narrative. Because people need to understand we're not making this up. This is the law. This is constitutional law, statutory law of long standing. So that's what makes this so hard. Any other comments?
I wanted to jump in, sorry, for the people who were virtual. Lacey Davis made a comment that she wanted me to say to the
Okay, yes, of
commission,
course.
sorry, that she agrees that it depends on the kid. Sometimes it's an age issue, sometimes it's a court issue, but she also wants to mention that sometimes the public isn't aware that kids under a certain age simply can't be charged because of statute.
Right. And that's part of our education mandate.
We've been on this side of the room for a while, so we're on that side for a minute.
Thank you. So I just wanted to add to it that while kids are back in the community, there's not the services there to provide to them. So we are sending kids home where they need to be, but then there's no services available to help them move on from whatever's happening and to address, like the chief was saying, what's going on in the home. So I think I supported much of the movement of getting kids. We don't want kids sitting in juvenile services. We want them back in their communities, but then we have to have the supports there for them. And so it's like we built part of the system and not the rest of it.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Exactly. That's good.
Yeah, so I just want to kind of build on what everybody else was saying, and that it's not that, I think a lot of people see, oh, nothing was done, right? Versus the right thing was done, right? And so then it's a question of what is the right thing to do, right? And it's also thinking about these are children. We want them to ultimately change the behavior. So what the community really wants is for the behavior to stop. right? Not for the kid to be locked up in jail per se. They want this child to grow up and be a contributing member of society. So what the community really wants is for that child to receive what they need. Why do they engage in that behavior? Which I guess to your police interviews, and maybe it doesn't need to be a police officer, maybe it needs to be a social worker doing the interview. But interviewing the child, why did they do what they did? What need was that fulfilling? That's our work group. We focus on the needs, prevention, right? And so then what can we do to help that child fulfill that need in a way that's more pro-social and proactive? So I really hope that as a commission, we can really reframe and refocus in that direction.
If we don't, we fail.
Correct.
If we don't, we have failed. And failure is not an option.
That's right. So I guess I wanted to lift up something that Nate did for us during our symposium this past fall. We do a symposium every year. We were talking about community and prevention, the community's role in preventing youth justice system involvement. And one of the things that I kind of took away from the keynote that he did there, which is online, you should go listen to it because it frames up so much of what we're talking about. Really thinking about, what is it that the community wants and how do we really help put forward, this difference between the retributive justice that we have in our society and looking at restorative justice and what does that actually look like and who's responsible for making sure that restorative justice actually happens. Because, even if you want retributive justice for any type of issue, our community needs that restorative piece. And so is it the police that are responsible for making sure that happens? Is it community members that are responsible for making that happen? And how do we frame up and message that and kind of teach the community what it is that they're really looking for, and then point out the different resources that are available in the community to make that happen?
Appreciate that. Thank you, please.
Watch the voice. So, thank you for the shout out. For the open space, the first thing I wanted to say was I love that we're doing these panels. I hate that juvenile justice in Maryland is getting litigated in the media, which has no comprehension of what's going on. So it's just what people are saying. So this is a wonderful space. Ask the detailed questions and say, what do we mean when police say they don't have any options? Let's understand that. That's what this group can do. So I really, really value that we're bringing in a group of people. I thought last month's presentations from police departments were wonderful. And I think we need to do more of that and get underneath things. So I think that's really helpful. Also, to Delegate Bartlett's point and to Judge Davis's point about civics, there are things we need to be able to call out about what the purpose of detention is and isn't. It's not about opinion. Some of these aren't about opinions. It's not. We don't punish people for things they're accused of in this country. So if we say two kids need to be held in detention, that has a very specific purpose of why we should detain a kid. If we believe that that kid poses a risk somehow to safety, to the community in some way, then we can make a case that a kid should be detained. If we think that they would pose a risk between then and when they're hearing this, right? If we think that there's a risk of flight or a risk of not appearing in court, we can make that case. But just this thing of retribution for something that they're accused of is not the purpose of detention for a kid on the night that he's been arrested. It's just not. It's not an opinion. It's not what the system is designed to do. So we have that. That's why the kids could go through court. That's why they could go through a process. That's what we think needs to happen. And so I think it's important to get underneath these things. We need to talk about them because the news is talking about that way. It's sounding like the number one thing that we mean by accountability is holding kids in detention before anyone's determined whether they did anything. And that's not right? So I think that's really important. And that's, again, I'm not saying that no kid should be held in detention. I'm saying the reason they should be held in detention is not purely because we were angry that they've been accused of doing something. The question of whether you see, to your point, right back on the corner, that is absolutely the responsibility of getting that right. But I I think these two things are connected though, about the commission and then those false ideas. Because we need to be able to connect those two things, like make this commission help make juvenile justice make sense. Because clearly the last state council that I was on didn't do a good enough job of that. We made recommendations, but we didn't do a good enough job to help people understand how it works and why it works the way that it does. And we need to do that, make it clear if it's too hard to understand.
Thank you, Nate, so much for that. All right, before we take a break, okay. Commissioner Anderson.
So I wasn't going to say anything, but I feel as though I have to. I represent a lot of the employees that work in the detention centers. And people have a misconception of us. We're not there to be judge and jury. We're governed by policies and procedures. We are support for the youth that are detained. We are mothers, fathers, we work in the community. Some of us are mentors. When we see a kid, the first thing I say, and I work in transportation, is I don't ever want to see you again. And if I did see you, I want to see you outside, living life, working, doing something positive. But we also get a bad rep because that is our job. That's what we got hired for, to make sure that the youth stay safe and also the staff that work in the facilities stay safe. But we have the same idea as everybody else, that we want to see these young people prosper in the community. But if they have to come to us, we are here to support them and guide them until they go through the process.
Thank you, Commissioner. Before we take a break, we've been joined by someone who is known to probably all of you, one way or another. She's come home. I just want to give her an opportunity to say whatever she wants. Welcome her to the commission. We've had a chance to work together a little bit over the years. And her reputation for integrity, competence, commitment, and strength precedes her arrival here. So, Madam Secretary, the mic is yours.
Well, thank you, Judge Davis. I really appreciate that kind introduction. And I do feel like I'm coming home. It's so great. I've been looking forward to this meeting all day and seeing so many familiar faces. And I apologize for being late, but I was at another meeting with the governor talking about public safety with partners from all around the state. And I am so encouraged by the collaboration and partnership and how everyone wants to lean in to work together to get this right. For our young people, for our communities, for our frontline staff, for our service providers. And this is another forum to get to do that. And I can't wait to lift up the work of this commission, to be a part of this commission and really move the ball forward. And I'm so incredibly proud to be a member of Governor Moore's team. And it's a privilege to serve in this role, and deeply honored by the trust that has been placed in me to lead the department really at this pivotal time. Right? There's so much opportunity. There's so much opportunity for our young people. And I say, there is no reason, looking around this room, why Maryland shouldn't be number one when we look at how to get this right. And I can't wait to work together with all of you. My main priority is to support public safety and to serve our youth with real solutions, with real partnerships. And I'm committed to working with everybody. And I bring to this work, I think, a deep respect of the complexities that we have at the juvenile justice system, how it operates, how people understand it, how it can actually serve young people. You know, my career has taken me from the courtroom, where I've advocated for young people, to really working on the front lines over the past 3 years with community-based staff, facility staff, learning from them directly what it takes to see the possibility of doing different. And working with our young people differently, because I 100% believe, and it doesn't matter what my belief is, because actually the science has proved it, that everyone has the opportunity to heal, the capacity to heal, the capacity to change their behaviors, as long as we give them the right stuff to do. So thank you, Judge Davis. Thank you, everyone, for your service. I can't wait to get to the work. I could go on, and I'm not, because I'm a little tired. It's day 2, and this is like a real job. So I can't wait to spend more time with all of you.
Thank you, Commissioner Tolentino. And Secretary. All right, well, can we take a 5-minute break and I'll ask the panelists, they want the panelists up at the front? Yeah, if the panelists will join me at the other end of the table, 5-minute break, and we'll have a great conversation.
Thank you. It's so good to see you. Molly's like, oh, you get to know what you're trying to do. And I'm like, I don't there's no way. I need it. I'll look at everything.
Sure.
I'm really excited. I mean, like the same as we did on day one, it doesn't feel like it's like I think 6 hours, which is actually I was in San Francisco finishing up my work there and took a red-eye back. I landed at 5 a.m. Wednesday and started the school. So, well, thank you. I'm very lucky. And we're all going to I'm excited for you all have to say that. No, I mean, I think it's like it's so much there are people today have this change every time. Nice to meet you. Thank you. I can't hear his friend out. I mean, yeah, I was like working with like frontline staff and facilities around the country. Can't wait to connect with them. You know, it's a perspective.
Good afternoon. Thank you all so much.
We can't wait to come back.
They're all good.
I'm sure.
Good stuff.
Here.
Oh, really? See, that's multiple. I really do. Exactly. They play the call interesting. So I just. That's 3 hours, 4 hours.
Yeah.
And I think, you know, this is
Yeah, that's so real.
That's a terrific panel. It gave me a lot of hope.
They were great.
It's, you know, particularly, I guess, I believe in
I was thinking
impressed. So,
I also
Social worker.
No, we got one.
It's almost like it's worse than that. I think that's the ice cream is in 4 seats. Yeah, so.
Oh, thank you.
Judge.
Thank you. Oh, I can't wait to tell you, like.
Understood. Thank you so much.
Like,
Great to see you.
oh, we're gonna have some conversation. That's so much. Yeah.
That's it. And, yeah. That takes you lawyers. Really. So we are very fortunate to have with us 3 practitioners who will surely educate us in ways that we need to be educated. As the earlier discussions demonstrated, there's just a lot of misinformation, bad information and a lack of information in our communities about the system that we care so much about and that we want so desperately to bring to young people, children, what they need. So I'm very pleased to have with us these extraordinary lawyers who do such important work. They represent young people facing charges in the juvenile legal system. And as all of you know, public defenders are often the first and most consistent voice advocating for youth, their due process rights, and their access to services, and which is sometimes overlooked, that I know and most of you know, engagement with the families of youth, which is a critical part of representing youth. The work of the public defender sits at the intersection of legal defense, youth development, equity, especially in our state, as we well know. The overwhelming majority of system-involved youth are Black and brown youth who are disproportionately impacted as a result of trauma, poverty, substance abuse, family dysfunction, and other pathologies, including adverse childhood events. So the conversation will explore the unique challenges of juvenile defense work, the role of defenders in advancing diversion and alternatives to incarceration, and what they see as the system's greatest gaps and opportunities. And they will share their insights from their case loads, reflections on systemic patterns, and recommendations for improving outcomes for justice-involved youth. Frankly, my guess is that we're going to have a panel of public defenders every year for the life of this commission, because there's just so much to learn from that particular cohort of stakeholders involved in youth justice. So briefly to introduce them, to my immediate right is Michelle Kim, who's a public defender in the juvenile division of the Public Defender's Office. Ms. Kim has been a lawyer for many years. She's worked both in juvenile as well as the felony system side of the house at the Public Defender's Office, and specifically chose to move back to the juvenile side back in 2006. Her passion for work on behalf of her young clients is clear. Next to Michelle Kim is Kimberly Watts. Ms. Watts is a graduate of the University of Baltimore School of Law and a career public defender as well. Has been involved in any number of aspects of juvenile justice and is active in a number of community organizations as well, both in her official capacity as a member of the Office of Public Defender and independently of that as well. And to Ms. Watts' right is Tierra Hawks, also an attorney in the Office of the Public Defender, also a graduate of the University of Baltimore School of Law, and a good college graduate. You know, for some reason, I don't meet very many good college graduates, but everyone I've ever met is just one. So they're doing something really great. Ms. Hawks is a native of Baltimore, and her interest in youth is long-standing. So with that, let's plunge right in. I will ask the panelists to keep their answers relatively short, but pithy. And I know that they can all do that. So let's just start. Give us, in quick succession, just a scenario, a typical paradigmatic scenario when you encounter a client for the first time. Why don't we start with you, Ms. Kim?
Thank you so much. Hi, everybody. So yes, there's two routes in which public defenders meet our clients for the first time. One is through what we call kind of paper arraignments or arraignments that don't come in as emergencies. Those cases and those kids, we don't meet until those cases are formalized. So at the arraignment hearing or near the arraignment hearing is when we learn that we have this client. Now in Baltimore City, we do try to have vertical representation. So once that kid is in our care, that kid remains in our care throughout their process throughout the system. But we don't get to put eyes on that kid until a charge is actually filed.
Okay, Ms. Watts?
So I would say the first encounter really, like she said, is the arraignment. It's talking to the kid, it's talking to the parent, because if you can imagine bringing your child in to talk to a lawyer, every parent is loath to be like, okay, I'm just going to let you alone with my kid, sure. So we always explain to them, you know, as a parent, you would violate the attorney-client privilege if I brought you into this room to talk to you. You could then wind up being a witness against your kid, which most parents are not eager to do. And then we talk to them, you know, to get to the second question, very differently than we talk to our adult clients, because we have different ethical rules. So my esteemed legal colleague here was saying, you know, we all have to stay in our lanes, and that's true. So let me just say at the outset, our ethical obligation is to have as normal a relationship with our clients as is possible. It's like Maryland Professional Legal Conduct 301.14. As normal a relationship as possible. That means that just because our clients are kids, doesn't mean we get to tell them what to do. It means we get to educate them. We get to enable them to make the best choices that they can, but ultimately they're in the driver's seat. As I always tell my clients, how often do you get to tell a 50-year-old woman what to do? So
how much, I don't want to assume any high base level of knowledge, but how much time typically elapses between a charge against or an allegation against a respondent and the arraignment? Ms. Watts, why don't you take that and then I'll go on to.
I think that varies from district to district, would be my guess.
Okay.
Like I know I practiced both in Anne Arundel County and in Baltimore City. And in Baltimore City, a good number of arraignments were like very shortly after the incident. Because they were being detained.
Shortly meaning?
Like within a couple of days.
Couple of days.
Right, but in Anne Arundel County, it was much more common to charge kids under a citation. And so they would go through the DJS process and have the opportunity to have a case handled informally. And so from like the charges, the incident itself to the arraignment, I think it's like, you look at the statutory timeframes. I want to say it's between those two things, like 60 days.
Mm-hmm. So let me ask you this. Back when I was a new judge back in the late 80s, the Maryland Public Defender had a pretty strict rule that you actually had to come to the office and complete paperwork to get representation. Was that ever true for juveniles? And is that still true today for anybody?
So I've been a public defender for 25 years, so I can answer the historical question pretty easily. Yes, there was a point in time when that was true. That has changed pretty dramatically, and I would say not even recently, but like 20 years ago at least. I know a lot of jurisdictions started going to the arraignments and having intake people there, and that is pretty standard practice, I think.
Okay.
Am I right about that, Michelle?
That's correct. And we also have our forms are online. So you can apply online for the defender. But we do have, I'm in Baltimore County, so we do have our paralegal go to arraignments and she collects applications from every client that's there, indicating they want to come defend.
I see. Ms. Hawes, what special considerations, special concerns, special approaches are necessary in the representation of juveniles, of young people, adolescents, as opposed to adult?
Well, to be honest with you, I'm only representing young people. I do the delinquency side, but I also handle juveniles that are charging adults. So if, for instance, my kid is in a juvenile court, I have them for a case and then they turn 18, I would keep that case, and so I would handle that in adult court. So that's the only adult side of it that I'm handling, but there's still a kid in my hand. And so I think how we handle it is we handle it just like they're a kid if they're in adult court. 18-year-olds are no different than 17-year-olds. They're just in a different environment. And ultimately, a lot of those times they're detained and they're in the detention center. So it's different. And so my approach is always the same. I'm always asking how they're doing. Are they okay? What's going on with you? What do we need to do to solve your case? So I think we just handle them with care, the same way we would anyone else.
How and when and with what approach, Ms. Hawks, do you engage with the family? And I'm sure it varies, obviously, but if you can give us an idea of the range.
As soon as I get the file, the first thing I'm doing is calling the parent because I want to find out about their kid, if there's any mental health concerns that I need to be aware of. What has the kid told you? Because usually they call the parent first, like, Mom, I'm locked up. What's going on? What's going on next? And so I want to give the parent as much information as I can because they're probably going to get to the kid before I can. And so, they're being called all day. I had to go physically over to the jail to go and see the kid or set up a video call or however. But parents are that first contact that you're going to have with the kid. Usually when a kid knows that they have an attorney, they're given a little, they don't feel as much pressure because they know that there's somebody on the outside that's going to come and see them. As I can to the parent until I can get to the kid. We try to see kids within 48 hours of receiving the case. So if I get a case on a Friday, I'm gonna try to see that kid on a Friday, even if it's after hours. But if not, this first thing I go on Monday morning to see that kid.
Okay. So this is for all three of you. We're all aware of the role that trauma plays in the lives of so many system-involved youth. And I just asked each of you, what, if any, training have you had or do you desire with regard to representation of traumatized young people? And what particular approach or innovations do you seek for your clients, whom many of whom I presume, and you'll correct me if I'm wrong, really have led traumatized existence up until the time they see you? Let's start with you, Ms. Watson.
So over the years, I can say we do a lot of training on trauma-informed, how trauma impacts our clients and how to communicate with all people who experience trauma. Speaking of everyone to some degree or another. So we get a lot of training about that. And it frankly has kind of, over the course of years, transformed the way I speak to people in general, I think, because like I said, I've come to realize that everybody has some trauma at some point. And so it's just a different way of looking at things.
Ms. Kim, and in answering, can you tell us, how does the trauma that you know is in the body of your client, how does it show up? Like at the first interview or throughout the representation?
So thanks for that question. I was actually just thinking about that today. So a lot of times, another way we get cases and we make clients for the first time is when they've been arrested and detained. And sometimes they've been detained for 24 to 72 hours before they have a court hearing. Those kids, especially if it's their first time in juvenile court, are terrified and they're crying. I can't tell you how many kids I have met who are in tears and are nonverbal, and that makes sense for so many different reasons. So I think the physicality of trauma that happens in these courtrooms is really important to emphasize, because this commission has a lot of expertise on talking about trauma in children. I don't think that's news. But let's really drill down as to where that appears and what that means and what appropriate treatment is, because the courtroom experience itself is traumatic. It is not a place for children or teenagers. I forget about this because the courtroom is where I work. And then I look to my side and my client is slumped over in tears, disassociating, all those things. It is an awful, awful environment for someone, oftentimes other adults, to tell the court, you know, this person that you don't know, that you're an awful child, that you do terribly in school, that you're a danger to the community, that you should be around your siblings. And these are messages that are being broadcast to our children on a daily basis. So the kind of physical, mental, psychic toll that courtroom trauma has on our kids is something that I don't think has been discussed enough. And when we talk about trauma-informed care, I really want us to kind of get into the specifics. And I've heard commission members talk about how important that is. We all talk about trauma-informed counseling. What does that mean, right? And what does that actually look like? Do we really have practitioners who are meeting our kids where they are? We actually had a conference where Adnan Saeed gave a presentation. He said, the first person after my arrest who talked to me with any kindness in 72 hours was a public defender. And it was the first person who touched me with comfort, right? So if we look at that lens, at how alienating, scary, and misery-causing the courtroom experience can be, we need to figure out ways to minimize that in order to actually get kind of efficacy, right? In order to get behavioral change that makes sense, because otherwise the courtroom is just a place where our kids do not want to go.
So one thing I think that a lot of the public defenders have to realize, well, but after you realize is that we need training in helping our kids. We can't help kids unless we help ourselves. So a lot of us are in therapy and we're working on ourselves. I'm a work in progress. So I had to understand that these kids are dealing with things that we may not know about, we may not understand, right? But I think it's my role to just try to understand them in a way that best suits them and best get them the services and the support that they need. And so we do have training. I think we need more training. I think everyone involved in the system, I know that DJS does a lot of training for trauma-informed care. So I think that everyone involved in the system, if you're dealing with youth, should have that training.
If I could just add something to what Michelle was saying, one of the big challenges is not simply how I talk to my client, but how I explain my client to the court. You know, as Michelle very aptly pointed out, like it's nothing but a barrage of what an awful human being that child is. And so when they're sitting slumped over, or when you have the kid who starts to make laugh, there are a lot of people in the world, myself included, that engage in nervous laughter. It is not a voluntary response. It just happens. And so, you know, you see that kid in court who starts to like get nervous and like twitch and like laugh a little. Judges go off and they don't even stop to think like, why are you laughing? They don't stop to think, why is that kid slumped over? What is happening here? They just assume, like, you don't even care. You think this is funny? No, they don't think it's funny. They're scared witless, and that's how it's coming out. They can cry, they can laugh, or they can slump. And apparently today, they're choosing this option. And when people don't see the reaction that they think they would have in that situation, which I can tell you is not always a reaction people have when they wind up finding themselves in that situation, they attribute ill intent to it. And it's difficult to break that bubble and make people see our clients in a different light, because they are kids.
You may have heard me say earlier in the meeting that I thought there existed this tension, inherent tension, that you as public defenders encounter, quite unlike a similar tension that the representation of adults involved. And so my hypothesis is you want to do what's best for your client, both in terms of getting the client services, getting the client placed, if placement is appropriate, in the most optimal place for your client. You want to do what's right for the client's family. You want to do all of that. But at the same time, when it comes down to it, you want to make sure your client is not found responsible for whatever the allegation is, right? I mean, that's the lawyer's role. That's the lawyer's role. So I'm going to throw it open and just ask the three of you to reconcile if I'm remotely accurate in my description of your role, reconcile how you live with yourself. But it could have that was a joking thing.
No, but you know what? That is a very real question. I will honestly say, I bet there isn't an attorney on this panel who hasn't been asked, how do you live with yourself by somebody at some point in time? I will not give you the snarky answer, which I gave to somebody at a bar when I asked him if he was going to get home tonight. Give me a call when you get that DUI and ask me then. But quite honestly, I am proud to do the work that I do. It is my privilege and my honor to help kids walk through this most difficult time that they will face. It is my privilege and my honor to help them navigate the system and help them make the decisions that put them in the best, that give them the best chance for success in the future. Like, do I think I know what's right for them? Well, of course I do. I'm a lawyer. I think I know what's right for everybody. It's fine. But that doesn't mean that I supplant my opinion for theirs, because that ethical rule I talked to you guys about is what controls. And so how do I do it? Just like that, you know, I remember that they are humans above all else. That just like I have my own children, this is somebody's child and is important to that parent. And I treat them the way I would want an attorney to treat my children. I would want somebody to stand up and fight for them. And if that means getting them off of a charge, then that's what that means. If my client tells me I want to plead guilty to that charge, that's what that means. Because sometimes that's a very real reality. I mean, you live in a camera age, half of everything is caught on camera. It's pretty easy to know who did what.
So, I forgot what the question was. I was over shaking my head. Okay.
Not responsible versus.
Yes.
Why don't you plead?
I think that is difficult. I think that is difficult. But we, at the focus of our job, they asked me this in the interview, what would you do if this happened? And I'd say, I would do whatever the client wants me to do. It's client-centered lawyering. So whatever the client wants to do, that's what I'm going to give them the options. This is what can happen. You could be put on probation. If you're on probation, then you could do community service hours. We have a judge in Baltimore County that gave one of my clients $800 of community service, and my kid says that was fine. And I was like, do you understand what $800 of community service really means? So, you know, kind of explaining to them what can happen, the possibilities of everything, the expectations that's going to be placed on them over the next period of time that they're on probation. I think if you give all of that information to a kid, they'll come up with the best decision for them, right? And that's my ultimate outcome.
Okay.
My ultimate goal.
Ms. Watson alluded earlier, before we go back to Ms. Kim, Ms. Watson alluded earlier to the parent's role, the family's role. How do you navigate how do you use, if you can, leverage a parent, maybe a loving parent, maybe a parent who really cares deeply. How do you leverage that, if you can, in your consultation and advice and lawyering for the client? How do you navigate that?
You can tell from the beginning what parents are active and engaged and what parents really don't care, to be honest. And so with that, you just kind of tailor, well, you know that at home, if you're going to be under DJS supervision, there's going to be requirements of you. There's going to be requirements of you as a parent. And so we all need to make sure that we're on board to make sure that he's successful on probation, because it's not going to be over until he completes everything. There's justice that's not going to find an order until you complete all the community service, you do all the therapy, you do all the things. And so we need to make sure everyone is on board with it. But oftentimes, there are parents who just don't want to do anything. I have a kid now who's coming back to court for a review because the mom was like, I don't want to take him to therapy anymore. The therapy is not in person and it's a whole thing. But it kind of, the judges, I'm hoping that the judge will get involved and kind of put some fear into this parent and say, like, this is something that's good for your kid, so you should be on board with it. This is your kid and this is what we're going to do. And they have to finish my
Quick question, again, before we go back to Ms. Kim. How do you get the parent in front of the judge in that situation?
Well, what is judge? He has he uses conduct and order of control and conduct over the parent.
So the judge's order grabs the parent.
Yes, and you can
Okay.
put them under an order to make
Okay.
them do the things that he wants them to do.
Okay, let's get,
So I want to give a slightly controversial
oh, good.
response to your really excellent observation about the tension between due process versus desire for services. So my contention is not one that's shared by everyone in my office, so please just, direct your ire at me, is that the demands of due process are directly contradictory to the developmental needs of our children. Court is not the appropriate place for children to learn accountability, for them to receive material needs. It doesn't do a good job of supplying any of those things. I'm going to give you a couple quick examples. Number one, when children are brought into court, and not as an emergency, but as a regular arraignment, the incident happens, let's say January 1st of 2025. That case does not get arraigned sometimes until June of 2025. That case does not go to trial until August or November of 2025. That case does not get disposed of until November. What child remembers what happened in January in order for any accountability measures to make sense to them by November, 11, 12 months later? The other thing is, a lot of times kids' cases get dismissed. In Baltimore City, a lot of cases get dismissed. And if I were a parent and my kid did something really harmful and their attorney managed to get that case dismissed, or the witnesses didn't show up, I would be livid, because I don't want my child to skirt responsibility for harm that they have caused. And yet due process mandates that, because beyond a reasonable doubt is beyond a reasonable doubt, and we shouldn't rely on any lower standard. But that is contrary to your position as a parent. Whereas I don't care if they can't prove that you were in that stolen car at 1 o'clock in the morning, you are grounded for the rest of your life is the appropriate response as a parent. So the courtroom does not supply any of the things that children need in order to be held accountable, to rectify their behavior. It doesn't do a good job of, as you've been pointing out, family engagement, right? The person that's in court is a child, and the child is 95% of the time not the focus of what's going on. It's an ecosystem problem. I had a kid who was 12 years old, whose 35-year-old dad took him on a drug deal, and he had a gun in his pocket. And I said, this kid is innocent. Why are we here? This should be contributing to the delinquency of a minor case, and my kid should be allowed to go on their way. This is a waste of everyone's time. Of course, everyone disagrees with me, and I lost on everything, but.
Well, I would just say you'd be pleasantly surprised at how non-controversial what you said is in this room. So that's a great segue, actually, to the question of services, alternative treatment, diversion. How, if at all, do you move the ball down the field when it comes to actual treatment, diversion, alternative? Ms. Kelly?
So diversion has a 92% success rate in Maryland. 92% of the kids who complete diversion through DJS do not get a new arrest for a year. It is the most successful system pathway that we have. And it is severely underutilized because of what you all were talking about regarding the need for retributive justice, right? Because it's just not satisfying enough to certain stakeholders that kids do not feel that weight of state violence kind of looming behind them, right? So diversion programs work. They actually hold kids more accountable because they have to face the people that they harm directly and apologize to them, which is something that's so important for our kids' development. And yet we had a state's attorney at a training the other day who said, I don't like diversion for cases because it doesn't allow the kids to get all the services that they need, like officially through the system, right? So that's the conflict that we're reaching. Diversion works, but why are so many stakeholders so loath to use it as an actual solution?
And I can answer that
Yes,
question.
please.
What I see every day in courts is that the state wants to have control, the court wants to have control. They want to feel like they have done something. I get it. It comes from a place that I want to help. But the reality is that controlling isn't always helping. Sometimes the best thing you can do is say, hey, this person here can help you with that. Off you go and let go. In terms of, I want to give a shout out to Ms. Edwards-Luce because she was talking about restorative justice. I know that was passed last year, a restorative justice bill that is going into effect, I think in July. And that is really promising. I hope schools will adopt that because I took the liberty of watching your last meeting and one of the panelists talked about how many of the arrests that happen in schools. This is a tremendous opportunity for, whoever, all of the actors to have a moment where they can understand each other and learn coping and talking skills. At some point in the last 30 years, I've lost track of the number of times I heard juvenile magistrates say things like, well, I understand this started as like a issue in the community, but if you don't talk to each other, you just call the police. And here we are. Every time somebody sneezes, people just call the police. They don't talk to each other. And I think we need to get back to our essential humanity and talking to each other. So that's what I would say in terms of what works. Ms. Kim's 100% right. To answer the question that was asked earlier of, what do I tell my constituents, everybody, when they say, I see these kids coming, they were back on the street the next day. We don't have a retribution delivery system. As Justice Bartlett, I just promoted you a lot. As Delegate Bartlett was saying, we have a justice system, not a retribution system. And the fact that somebody is home the day after they broke into a car doesn't mean that they're not in trouble. It doesn't mean that they haven't been grounded. And I don't hear courts as often as they used to ask the parents, so how did you handle this at home? They just kind of assume that it wasn't, which is not the right assumption in most cases.
Ms. Hawes.
So one of the things that I've experienced is the magistrate can send a case back to intake if you ask for it. And so a lot of judges aren't willing to entertain that because they're like, no, we're going to resolve it today. It's already in the system. It's already a case. And I think that's a huge misfortune that we are putting upon our kids because I think that there are time frames that the judges want to meet. They don't want to postpone a case. They don't want to, there's an option for a community mediation, right? And let's say it's assault between two kids. You can send that case to mediation, have the kids talk it over, figure it out, come back to court for disposition, and then maybe dismiss the case. But at that point in time, there's already a case on their record. Even if it's dismissed, it'll be used against them as a contact later on if they pick up another case. So we need to figure out a way to stop the cases from coming to court in the beginning, because even if the case is resolved by whatever means that we have, that case still affects them later on if they pick up another case.
Okay. You all have been phenomenal. I really want to make sure that leave room for questions from commissioners. I think two more very quickly. First of all, just give us the number on how many occasions for each of you have you represented the same young person in separate proceedings. Off the top of your head, how many times have you represented the same person for two cases? Ms. Kim?
So Commissioner Richard Worley of the Baltimore City Police Department said out of 600,000 youth in Baltimore, 200 are the repeat offenders in that case. And so it's half of 1%. And that is correct. And Baltimore City, because I practiced in Baltimore County for most of my career, but Baltimore City has a problem with kids who keep on getting more and more cases because I think there's more kind of deprivation, material needs are not being met on the ground. So I would say at the top of my head, in Baltimore City, kids with a lot of contacts with the court make about 10% of my caseload.
Thank you. Ms. Wells?
I think that's about right. Like it may feel like they represent more because you see them more, you remember, therefore you remember them better. With the number of clients I've had that I don't remember at all, really, if I look at the numbers, outweighs a lot, but the number of kids that I've had as repeat clients.
I would definitely have to say about 10%. It's those kids where you're like, I just cannot get rid of you. And so, like I said, some kids I've had cases where I had a juvenile case with them, and then I had a transfer case with them, and then the transfer case denied, so now I have an adult case with them. So that does happen, but I think that's only happened about 2 or 3 times, and I've been a public defender since 2020. So.
Okay. All right, my last question, and then we'll turn it over. 4 stakeholders, participants, institutions, courts, judges, state's attorney, schools, and DJS. A is spectacular performance, F is failing. I'd grade each one, all 4.
Wow.
Yeah.
Your Honor, you're going to, okay, all right. All right.
Very quick.
All right,
Courts. I think it's a generalization.
Okay.
It's a generalization, and it's subject
I'm gonna say this.
to the normal criticism of any generalization. But between the 3 of you, we're looking at, nearly 50 years of experience in the largest jurisdictions, among the largest jurisdictions.
In Baltimore City Juvenile Court, I will say that magistrates and judges really do try to connect with children and do a good job. I'm gonna give them a C.
Okay. State's attorney. You do have a Fifth Amendment right here.
Yeah, you can answer that question because.
All right. DJS.
I'm gonna say it's very binary. Sometimes it's an A+ and sometimes it's a B.
And what did I say? Schools? Schools.
Again, I think it's really binary.
Okay.
Yeah.
I would agree with what Michelle said. Like, I don't think you can give a single grade to the whole system. Some judges are amazing with kids. Some don't recognize that they're talking to kids at all. But what I will say about state's attorneys is, again, I'm going to inject some history here. Like, I remember back in the day when it was a very different culture. It was more, you could talk to prosecutors much more easily than you can now. I think for a host of reasons that I won't even begin to speculate about, it's very different now. Plea negotiations are much more difficult and fraught. And some of that is because of our elected state's attorneys. So I am a Baltimore County resident, but I have worked in Baltimore City. And so I feel like we need to hold our elected state's attorneys to higher standards of truth, to be blunt. And I'm going to call out Ivan Bates, who recently wrote an op-ed where he basically said the problem is that DJS doesn't consider the public safety when they're making their decisions. That is not true. It is patently false. They have 3 different validated detention risk instruments. One that they use at detention, one that they use when looking at what to do in the case, whether to forward it, how to resolve it, and one that they do at disposition. Every single one of them looks at the public safety. Every single one of them. And yet, nobody is holding the top prosecutor for Baltimore City to the standard of simple truthfulness.
So that's not an incomplete grade right there.
No.
So I would probably just give everybody a C. And the reason for that is because I just think that there's more work that everybody could do. And I think if we try to work more collectively together instead of blaming each other for the bad grades that we're getting, then maybe it would just all work together and be better. We all have A's. It's like a group project, and we're all failing the group project because none of us are really doing our parts.
Okay, Suki has volunteered to do the legwork. So, questions? Delegate Phillips.
That's right. Other people gotta hear. But I speak kind of loud. So I'm going right to Attorney Kim. I love the comment that you made. But now you gotta tell me if, and I said that to the secretary, start this thing all over again. And to get due process, get this contradiction, what would it look like for you? So we don't have this different competing values that we're trying. I think it works with adults, but these two competing values present real challenges for our children.
Absolutely. So one thing is to empower and educate parents, right? If you think about your kind of childhood and adolescence, who was a discipline provider in those scenarios? It's going to be your immediate family. And is that happening? Is that responsibility being taken seriously by that group of people? So in the immediate kind of, and it's not super satisfying, I understand that, but parents, I think, are kind of the first level and genuine first responders to address behavioral issues that they see. On the next level, in some tribal circles, they have tribal justice, where circles of community members, elders, the people that love them have these meetings with the child, and they come up with community solutions together. I think that's really beautiful. I don't have a lot of research about how effective that is, but when we remove the danger of incarceration or state violence, due process is not something that is at the forefront of what has to be overcome. Does that make sense?
It does, it makes a lot of sense.
And so I think we can come up with community solutions. We have community spaces, we have libraries, we have schools, we have churches. And once upon a time, we agreed that those community spaces were responsible for helping raise our children.
Do you think that would satisfy the community who is their mindset about demonizing our children?
That's an excellent question. I think there's multiple layers to that. So I'm going to say, like, the community members who are doing this in good faith and not out of like a racism reaction, right? I think that if community members got a buy-in and were able to see actual results, I think that's what community members care about. I think part of what's going on in terms of that outrage is because they're being fed a consistent line of information that's saying that these kids are getting away with all these behaviors and getting slapped on the wrist. And that's not accurate, but that's what's being fed to them on a daily basis.
Anybody else want to take that? Like, if you just fill this up and spell it over.
Well, all I was gonna say is, I think it does start with the parents. In a lot of my cases, we have parents who are 30 and their kids are 15. So you have a kid that was brought up by someone who was a kid themselves and raising them doing the best that they can. So, there's so many different things that can happen to them. The grandparents are raising them. There's definitely financial instability. There's going to be a whole lot of things that are going to be affecting these kids in this group. And I think that if we give more resources to the parents and to the families to help them to raise their kids and rear their kids in the right ways, we have kids that are growing up around family members who are involved in criminal activities. So what is the expectation that we put on that kid to be something different than what their family members are? So I don't think it starts with the kids. I think it starts with the next level with the parents and family.
But if I could just defend the parents for a second. Because I don't disagree that it starts with parents, but what I can also say is that when I talk to my clients' parents, a lot of times they're overwhelmed. They don't know what to do for their kids. They are working full time at a minimum. They're trying to put a roof over their head. They're trying to feed everyone. A lot of times with single parent households for whatever reason, and God bless those people. I cannot imagine how they do that. So I think I would start with the question of not what did you do, but what do you need? What's happening here? Because what I always find is that, a lot of times my clients complain that there's not enough food in the house. And what middle class or upper class suburban judges hear is, as their kids complain, like, you don't have any food in the house, which translates to, you don't have what I want. You don't have junk food. What it means for people who are in poverty is there is not food in the house and I'm hungry. Or alternatively, maybe there's food, but I don't know how to cook it and you're at work. And so I think what we need to ask is, what do you need as a family?
Over here.
I am one of those parents.
God bless you.
So yes, my son just recently, did the year in July at DJS. So I understand what you all are saying. I hear it, speaking for a lot of families. Starting from the beginning, when you were saying family involvement, I know with, we had a different attorney, we got a public defender, and she was great. However, it seems to me when we talk about youth and making decisions, we keep saying they're children, but then we can't be involved in that. So you're asking a child to make a decision about their lives when they've made these bad decisions to get in this situation, and now a parent can't be involved in that because of these legality issues that are being faced.
And that's the fundamental problem with criminalizing the behavior, right?
Right. So that's one point that I don't know if there's laws or things that can be looked at or can be done differently. We had a great public defender who, and I'm one of those parents, so I was more involved probably than I was supposed to be, but and then we're responsible for things. So like in my child's situation, there was restitution. There were things that he had to do. I had to do that because he's a juvenile. But you won't let me be involved in what's going to happen in the case, but now you're making me responsible for things that are going to happen in his case after this happens and things of that nature. So also on the part of the family, like you were saying, there are families, yes, who have a lot going on, who have all those things going on. I wasn't one of those parents. My son made decisions that he should not have made. I wasn't that parent who you're grounded, you're this, you're that, and he was with friends and did some things that he shouldn't have done. However, there's that atmosphere that all parents are the same. We all have not done any rules for our kids. We haven't taught them anything. We have not tried to lay down the rules and the laws for them. Nobody is involved with them. There's no village. There's no anybody. And oftentimes parents go very put off when there are several who are involved, several who are with their kids and who are speaking up for their kids and advocating for their kids and trying to make a difference. And then we kind of get that blanket effect of, you all don't know anything, you haven't been anywhere, these type of things. And so that needs to change. Parents don't feel, and I've been talking to people, parents don't feel they want to come and speak up for their kids. They don't feel anybody's listening. They don't feel anybody cares. But at the onset, where are the kids gonna go? We're advocating for them to go home. So who are they going back to? Us. And there are not enough community resources. They're just not. I'm in Waldorf and I'm in Southern Maryland. There's nothing. I've been speaking, whoever will listen, I've been saying that, and there's several other smaller communities who are facing the same thing. So Baltimore City, other places, and they need it. But we also need those resources, and we shouldn't have to fight as hard. And like you were saying, their parents who are working and have other things going on, who can't speak up, who can't fight, who can't do those things to get what they need. But then you have this child coming back home. We all want our kids to come back home, but now what do we do with them? How do we support them? Because nobody's given us the help and resources that we need to support them. So they end up getting in trouble again or something else happens. And then now the parents are looked at, the kids are looked at, and the whole cycle starts over.
So, all those resources you talked about are really expensive. No matter how many incomes you have, they're really expensive. And what we know is that pro-social activities really are good predictors of whether kids will get in trouble, because when they're busy with, supervised pro-social stuff, they don't get in trouble. That stuff is expensive. After school programs, expensive. Youth sports, really expensive. You can find things that aren't as expensive, but if you have, if you're living in poverty, $5 is a meal. So spending that on a soccer team is really.
Commissioner Reed, we are so fortunate to have your voice in this. We have time for one more question, Chief.
First off, thank you guys for what you do. And I know somebody put that in the book, a cop said that, Chief said that. I'm just, sorry. I'm just wanting to say, there's a lot of stuff going off what Ms. Reed said, and like you in many cases, my cops are on the front line of this where they're seeing things that a lot of them never seen. But if we dismantle the whole system, because I got to tell you, you guys got me too. We just need to dismantle the whole thing. and figure out a different way he goes. So what does that look like? I'm not asking, I don't want the doctorate on it. The doctorate version, just like, what are the first couple steps you would look at? Because, and the people don't believe me sometimes when I say this, you know who doesn't want to deal with these kids? You know, right, who doesn't want to place a kid who just stole food because he's hungry into custody? You know, my cops don't want to do that. My cops that work for me in Montgomery County don't. Cops in Charles County don't. So what would it look like the first 2 or 3 steps? Because there's resources, there's money there, and maybe it's being directed wrong to do this. So here's your chance. A cop asked you, public defenders, what do you think? What do we do? Okay.
I know. No,
I didn't say I gave you a softball. Okay.
Well, I'll let you two think, and I'll just start talking and see what comes out. So let it go on record that not only did you say that to a public defender, but as a public defender, I recognize that cops don't necessarily want to do that you aren't all just trying to arrest kids and be an evil. You know, there's a difference between an interrogation and an interview, and, you know, you guys know the difference, right? So I think that the problem we have had with cops is that we have asked you to do more than is reasonable. We've asked you to enforce the laws. We've asked you to be peacekeepers. We've asked you to be like mental health evaluators on the spot to determine if somebody has to go to a hospital. So I think what we really need to do is not have you guys be the only tool in the arsenal, and maybe not even the first tool. We've made good strides in having crisis response units. Like, I don't know if there's anybody here from Anne Arundel County, but at your
Response unit rocks.
I mean, you guys really do. And it's because it's not just a police officer, it's a police officer and a social worker. And they, you know, clearly talking to them together, they have educated each other about things. And so that's much more effective. So police need to not be the only tool in the arsenal, because I think it's unfair that we ask you to be a Swiss Army knife when you're just not.
Okay, I want to. You want to answer? Look, be respectful of your time, and as I said, they'll be back. They'll be back. Maybe not these 3, but we'd love to have these 3 back. But we will hear from the public defender and other lawyers on the defense side as well going forward. But I do, again, want to be respectful of your time. So I will hand the talking stick to Suki to close out with a couple of housekeeping matters. And then we'll wish you a pleasant summer.
Thanks, Judge. I'm just kind of blown away. Thank you. Thank you so much. So just real quick, so that's feedback on the outline in a few days on the 16th, work group summaries by the 28th of July. The steering committee and the work groups, your work never ends. You meet in the months to come. The commission, we're kind of off, we're gonna hang out and chill, but the steering committee, still. The next commission meeting will be September 11th. Likely here, but we'll talk about it. We'll talk about that offline. The last thing I do want to say, and it is news that our amazing, talented Bethany Young is going to be departing from us. She will not be here in September and move forward. We have to give her a huge round of applause. That really stood this whole thing up. And
yes.
It's been a pleasure. This was a really hard thing to do, and you know, couldn't have done it without each of you. You obviously are in very good hands with Suki. She's got it, and Davis and Ainsley and Lindsay. I'm going to make sure it moves forward. I'll be watching and cheering, and I know we'll do great things to come. It was really a really hard decision for me, but love the state of Maryland and know all of you do have full faith in what you're saying.
Well, that was that harder than I thought it was. Okay, y'all, we will we will depart. You will be hearing from me. You know I like to email. So take care until then. Thank you so much.
Thanks, everyone. Thank you so much for coming. Safe travels. Thank those of you who joined us by Zoom. You're very much a part of this. Onward and upward. And welcome to our new secretary.